We can start. So, hi everyone, welcome to another Tropilunch. For today's talk, we have Dr. Pilar Useche. She's a professor, TCD interim director, and applied economist with expertise in international development and sustainable agricultural economics, who has extensive research and field experience in Latin America. And she's the principal investigator of the Power of Connections project, together with Dr. Karen Kainer, Dr. Beryl Sell, and Dr. Jonathan Dane. And today she will be sharing with us some highlights and lessons from the 24th annual LAS TCT conference on Amazonian conservation. Pilar, please.
Thank you, everybody, for coming to the presentation. You all know there was a cancellation from Tropilunch, so that's put together this PowerPoint for our team really benefits from that. We are in the process of drawing some conclusions from the whole project that just ended, as well as the conference, which was kind of the culmination of not of the project fully, but of the main events that are happening in the project. The project, the Power of Connections, Harvesting Lessons and Strengthening Coalitions for Amazonian Conservations. Many of you, probably most of you, already heard about this project.
Click here. Just one click there, yes. And then you can use the mouse.
Okay, now can I use this?
Is it working?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I just want us to remember our goals a year and a half ago were to exchange and disseminate lessons learned in the development and implementation of conservation strategies. More particularly, we wanted to have lessons from people who are on the ground. Academics, many times they come too late. Whatever is happening on the ground is not going to come to the public academic publications until who knows how many years. So we wanted to do that, and we wanted to invigorate the existing networks and coalitions that TCD is a part of, but that exist especially around across the Amazon. Our project team, I'm not going to introduce ourselves, so it all started in the spring of 2025. We started with a course where we engaged different students in order to start planning and thinking about how we were going to congregate all these people and what were the main themes that we needed to address in order to address Amazon conservation. So throughout this course, these students were exchanging information, and some of our alumni from TCD were actually participating as lecturers, or they were giving lectures in the specific course. So the engagement, the connections started at that point. And then we started brainstorming and thinking, wondering what were the key acupuncture points where we could enter the Amazon conservation ecosystem or system, where we can do small interventions that will yield large changes in the whole system. So we came up with socio-bioeconomics and conservation finances as one of the main topics to keep working on, transforming institutions for the next generation of leaders in conservation, collaborative management, innovations in the research process, legal strategies for indigenous rights and governance. And then at the end of the workshops, we plan to do a conference, the Power of Connections conference that we just lived through. This is just the whole process for each workshop. There was a lot of planning, a lot of meetings, logistics, and from logistics to thematic participants. And then we actually were able to pull it and have 5 workshops around the Amazon basin in Brazil, in Bolivia, in Peru, in Ecuador, where each of the workshops had a specific theme, and there were participants that from all different sectors of society, government, NGOs, academics, local community leaders, indigenous leaders. We try to aim for a diverse representation, and sometimes we put strategic groups together so there could be a dialogue between groups that usually don't get to sit together in the same room. After those workshops, as I mentioned, the conference is the culmination of that. The power of connections. This is our flyer that you have seen, and these are the sponsors of the conference. We had a large number of sponsors. That was very fortunate. I think I'm not going to mention them right now. And going into the conference schedule and overview, this is very important because as we organize this week of events, we didn't have, so we were pressed in terms of time and space. We had 5 events in 1 week. The week started with the TCD alumni visioning. Then we did the discussion panels for the conference that opened the conference. Then we had the keynotes, the workshops, and the poster sessions. And then we had a summit we call the Power of Connections Summit in order to think about Amazon challenges and specific action that we wanted to move from the ideas of the workshops and the conference to specific action that we and our network would start working on. So this is, finally, there were some post-conference clinics. I'm not going to talk about them because I want to focus on the main ideas that came out of these different events. Something really important is that, as I mentioned, not only were we time constrained, but also space constrained. The event location for the conference had a maximum capacity of 160 people per code, and we had to cap the registrations when they were at around 147, 150. So a lot of people who wanted to participate were not able to. We had a group of 75 high school students. We had to, unfortunately, not let them come to the conference because we already had too many people. And for the visioning and for the summit, the facilitation and the location in Austin Carey didn't allow us to have more than 60 or 70 people. And we had already around 40, 50 alumni that were coming. So that then again made us, we had to limit the space. And this was important for me to express because a lot of people some people who are online may have not been able to participate because we had to constrain. We were constrained. Who was in the room for the conference? We were able to count for approximately 200 attendees, counting all the different events together, representing 8 Amazonian countries and over 50 institutions. The largest representation was UF faculty, staff, and affiliates. We had between 20 and 30 students. We had about 16 funders and people from funding agencies or philanthropic agencies, and international academics were present as well. Conservation, non-government organizations, Brazilian institutions, and broader community. We also had Funders and strategic partners were in the conference. This from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, from the Andes Amazon Fund, from the Global Environmental Facility, the Wildlife Conservation Network, the Legado Initiatives, and the Brazilian Development Bank. These are just, this is a list that is not, doesn't include all the organizations that were represented at the event, including the Nature Conservancy, with Mauricio Núñez Reguero, one of our alums, Wildlife Conservation Society. In this case, I'm writing the names of people who were there, who were also alumni, to show the representation, not just of the institutions, but also of the alumni network from TCD. This is mostly Brazilian, but there were people from Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, multiple other places. Why does this matter? It matters because we are trying to strategically align research and funding communities. This enables us to be in a dialogue with people who are funding our research. It also matters because we can understand and demonstrate the program's long-term institutional impact, specifically in this case, across the Amazon. We had practitioners that led regional workshops, and we put them together. They came together with our students, with our faculty. So we created this cross-generational exchange, and there was a broad representation in terms of regions, in terms of sectors. So for us, all of this is very important for the program and for the center and for UF. Just to talk very quickly about what came out. Of course, this is not going to be a comprehensive review of everything because we had so much information. We have so much information that we need to summarize, but I will give you an idea of what came out. The TCD visioning with the alumni, we had a SWOT analysis that we did, and we envisioned future scenarios, and we created some vision. The analysis revealed important strengths and opportunities, as well as weaknesses and threats. Here, these are written pretty abstractly in general terms, but if you think of each of these blocks was informed by tons of ideas and insights from people that usually are not sitting with us here in this room. So they make pretty evident things that we often don't see because we are here, and their insights were really amazing. So in terms of strengths, they recognize TCD in this case as a world-class network with high research quality, applied practice, a lot of impact, and a culture that is inspiring. The fact that we were able to convocate so many people speaks about it. Weaknesses, identity gaps, funding fragility, limited institutional capacity, and generational transition, both within the program and at UF. So there's a transition that is happening, and those are the weaknesses. In terms of opportunities, alumni power, curriculum diversification, new funding options, global expansion, generational transition can be seen both as a weakness, but it can also be seen as an opportunity. So that's the two sides of the coin. And threats, this is probably correct for all of our programs: political headwinds, restrictive funding, field safety for us, for the ones that do field research, academic system pressures.
Pilar, can you explain a little bit about identity gaps? What's meant there?
it's not really identity. Yeah, I was thinking more about at some point, some people advise that we should create more skills courses. For example, go beyond Latin America and go beyond certain skills to include more regions in the world, but also to include things like management, finance, health. So in that case, I guess some people would see us going more globally, but there's a gap between. So I think it's not the right terminology. But
Does it mean being less academic?
perhaps, yeah. I would say more like, yeah.
Are you talking about diversity of disciplines?
Diversity of disciplines was one of the things that was mentioned about the possibility of going broader and encompassing with disciplines. The question is, how do you go broader without losing your identity and your core essence? So some emerging ideas that came directly out of the visioning was to claim the network that we have, basically build the data, the alumni database, activate it for mentorship, funding, and co-creation. These were all, like, alumni were fired up to participate, and they were like, how can we help? So that we already started working on the network and that database. We want to expand it. We want to update it. The emerging ideas was also that, again, because there's a search for a new director, this is a new opportunity to have more visibility, to highlight innovations that are happening right now in the program, and go expand across UF and globally. Diversify funding, that was another emerging idea, because we rely a lot on external grants and the endowment, but there's a lot of other funding out there through philanthropic partners and through private gifts. Expand the tent. This is related to that idea of going broader geographically and in terms of this multidisciplinarity, and building to last by institutionalizing more our network, creating ways how what we do today will be part of a data bank that will inform what we're going to do tomorrow, and having some continuity. Another key point was to retain the international talent that we have in the community that we have. Moving to the conference, there were initially some discussion panels. I won't talk too much about them. I will focus on the ideas that we received from the keynote speakers, and then from the workshops, the thematic leads in the workshops. So the keynote speakers really highlighted the urgency of action. We started with Annie Alencar, who spoke about tipping points and how there are not just ecological tipping points that we are reaching, where the Amazon may be, the forest stocks may be irreversibly affected, but also social points that are tightly intertwined with those ecological tipping points. So social tipping points related to food, energy, security, all of these things that for example, insecurity, illegal activities are growing at a rate that they could be making some damage that is irreversible, not just ecologically, but also socially. Vulnerability and urgency, I mentioned this. There was, Annie also saw the need to map the information, not just locally, but have a regional information that addresses these issues. Building coalitions was seen as something really urgent, and scaling up efforts, but respecting diversity, not scaling up as the concept of homogenizing things and moving vertically. Policy coherence, that was Pascal who mentioned that. And then Tuntiak Katan, he came up with a call for, he said, we don't need more money, we need better money. So that was another idea that resonated with a lot of people at the conference. And he also really emphasized the relevance of territoriality in how research and investments need to consider the territory and return or share returns with the local people. He also referred to conservation as, in his mind, thinking about conservation as coexistence. Integrating knowledges, the need to integrate different types of knowledge, indigenous knowledge, local knowledge, and academic knowledge. Key threats were identified. The main threats that people have been talking around are related to extractive economies. And it was also seen that infrastructure is a drivers of deforestation. Avesita Chichon from the Moore Foundation especially emphasized institution building, capacity building, and the fact that strong institutions actually create positive tipping points, whereby you create strong institutions and things start working better. She also said how rules and norms are the foundation of institutions, and those rules and norms need to be geared towards reciprocity, trust, and collaboration. And finally, a note of the key, something positive was that the keynotes told us how even though there's increasing wealth inequality in the world, there's also a lot of people who are donating money for conservation, and both and the funders that were there, they gave specific numbers, like Moore being part of a network that has around $1.8 billion to give. So this was a positive note in the sense that there's people there that are really invested in donating money for conservation and sustainable development. The workshops, after the keynotes, we had a summary of what happened, of the insights from the workshops. Instead of looking at the conference, we looked at the insights from each of the workshops. I am going to talk about key themes that appeared that were common across all of the workshops. The first one was that the communities need to be integrated in the development process, in the research process. They are key protagonists. They don't want to be seen as beneficiaries. The traditional model was that communities are the target of an intervention instead of being the people, technical, academic, political actors, as they are now more and more. Different sectors defined co-management in the workshops in different ways, but what was shared was that everybody agreed that shared responsibilities must derive into shared returns. These are different examples of across the workshops that reflect this common theme, where we saw examples in the co-management workshop of an ecotourism alliance between a private company and a community in order to jumpstart an ecotourism project where they signed a 20-year contract that is like very, very special to look at such a long-term horizon. And the private company progressively was willing and able to transfer the ownership to the community. So right now, the expeditions company is 100% community run. So those are examples. This is from the co-management workshop. This is from the finance workshop about, another company that helped or created a partnership with a community to create a shared brand. So there's a brand that has all the communities of a specific region. Their products, they all are being sold under that particular brand. And similar, there's other examples here. But the second common theme was that the emphasis in we need long-term projects, long-term investment. We need continuity in efforts. And how that, the problem of the short-term funding cycles is just really detrimental for communities, for projects, for trust. There are hundreds of places where we see these project cemeteries when we go and operate and we implement a project and we see that the same project has been implemented over 100 times and there hasn't been any continuity. So the communities emphasize that. They also emphasize the institutional memory loss when there's a lot of turnaround in on the part of the program managers, the people who are investing the money, and how when a project fails, it also destroys the trust of the community in these conservation initiatives. These are examples, again, from the specific projects. It was identified that for financing, you need to blend different types of finance, and that philanthropic money can be used to de-risk investments at the beginning. But at some point, communities should be graduating and being able to have a stream of income that doesn't necessarily rely on philanthropic money. So those are just examples. The third point was gender considerations and youth are structural conditions. They are not add-ons. They shouldn't be add-ons to programs because basically the sustainability of programs relies on new generations, and both women and youth are critical for this shared, educational connections in the networks. And we found examples of these across workshops, examples of the relevance of these broad participations, examples of things that are working, examples of moments where communities have changed the way how they operate because they realize the importance of this factor. Number 4, ethics must be designed into every relationship. This is something that was also came in different workshops. Ethics in research, ethics in finance, ethics in the collaborative management of projects. It goes all the way from who defines the questions of research in the case of the research process, who owns the data, who is named an author, all of these steps during a process matter. Communication and narrative are underused strategies. It was identified that communication strategies are key for visibility, and it was pointed out how the private sector, for example, the agribusiness sector, really does a good job at creating some narrative that enables them to add value to what they do to their products. So it was in the case of social bioeconomy, several funders and investors explained how the stories behind the products are really matter. The traceability, the information about who is producing that, what are the ecosystems that are being actually benefiting from a product that the communities are trying to sell. Another place where communication matters is that articulating these success stories also energizes the young generations. And this is critical because we all know that young generations are leaving rural areas at quick rates. And finally, something that is an issue across the board is fake news, which also travels with connectivity, an issue that is to be addressed. Number 6, territorial and governance rights. In several workshops, we saw that communities need secure rights over the property in order to be able to have access to credit, in order to have access to markets, in order for governance to become possible. Once their rights are secured, then autonomy starts flourishing. And this is rights in a broad sense, not just land rights, but rights to governance. We saw several examples of this happening across the Amazon. The key examples were Bolivia and Colombia, which have advanced their constitutions enormously. And we all, especially the indigenous groups and leaders gave us or were concerned about the rate at which conservation law is advancing, because they find themselves actually surrounded by protected areas. So conservation law is advancing at a faster rate in many places than the rights laws that actually give local communities the rights of autonomy rights or governance rights. Finally, strengthening the Pan-Amazonian network is something else that came across all of the workshops. Sorry, what time is it?
It's okay. 15 minutes.
Okay, yeah. I have so many details. It's so much information. It's basically we need to learn from others. People in the Amazon really felt that they need to see examples and they need to connect with people in other places across the Pan-Amazon. We saw how in the workshops they connected among, they all had a recognition that they had the same interests, and the information they shared was so valuable for them. So it was not just about learning from others, it was about creating trust and generating a collective action. And the last part, the summit, basically let me step back. With the workshops, we see 5 different themes. We see specific ideas, kind of isolated fixes for these problems that we identified. So in the summit, we tried to find cross-cutting themes and elevate these points to a higher level of trying to see a broader vision of how these specific needs from communities are translated into broader policies. But then, given our network, where can we start to move forward in order to address both the local needs, but also the higher level needs in terms of reaching policymakers, for example? So that was the process that we did during the summit. And we're going to see, I don't have a lot of, the work that we did was with these flip charts. These were 2 days of brainstorming and information collection, where all these ideas from the networks and the experiences were consolidated into umbrella topics. So the first thing that came out was that all our emphasis in social bioeconomies, for example, is related to rethinking the model of development. That's the higher level objective. The lower, the more specific task is, okay, let's invest in social bioeconomies. But in reality, the challenge that was identified was how to transition from a destructive development model to alternatives that support people, lands, etc. And these are all, specific action themes that people who were present were willing to work on. So very specifically to our network, where can we start? The second umbrella topic that people wanted to work on was how to co-create, share, and integrate knowledge that can be applied to these address specific challenges. So people brought so many different ideas. They participate in different networks. The third topic was climate readiness, persistent biodiversity, how to address persistent biodiversity and climate crisis that require adaptation and readiness. So we see that in this topic, we have issues like local infrastructure, water, food security, fire. So all of this was a group that is ready for action to address this. Governance, the crisis of governance, corruption, and illegal harmful activities was also addressed. Actors and power, this also kind of goes within governance. And finally, how do we include the youth? What are specific programs that we need to engage in order to do this? So as I said, basically, we started with the workshops. The workshop foundations, the insights were what communities on the ground perceived as needs and where we need to invest. But then when we went to the summit, we started looking at going from these principles and these isolated topics to ideas of how to take action. So here I have a few examples of what the workshop identified. Say the workshop on legal strategies, communities need legal security, and then each of the action groups share some of these actions that can be done right now by our partners to address legal security. Gender and next generation inclusion was addressed by the youth group, by the group that wants to work on actors and power, ethical relations, coherent narratives and connections. These are specific things that I summarized from that. But basically, more than 5 workshops and a conference, we have a living network that is ready for action. And I welcome any comments, in particular compliments from the team, questions.
Very much, Pilar, for such a rich